For my research essay, I dive in and talk about concussions. Concussions are the leading injury in contact sports, and there's not much going on to prevent that from happening. Throughout my research essay, I will explain my opinion and the facts of others to support my thesis. My thesis is that sports organizations are not doing enough to protect athletes, and this truly is the case. Sports organizations are trying to implement these new ideas and new rules about heading a soccer ball at the recreational level, but it's ineffective because officials are not enforcing the proper rules. And as a woman who plays in the collegiate level of soccer, I've seen many individuals receive concussions over a period of time from the recreational level till now. And what people fail to recognize and understand is that a concussion does not just happen because of one blow to the head. It happens over periods of times of little blows to the head, like heading a soccer ball, or just little bumps that happen in contact sports like usual. And what is the most astonishing thing to me is that these children, younger these days, are receiving concussions. And U.S. Soccer has just come up with this new idea that implements children from the age of 10 and under will not be allowed to head the soccer ball in practices and in games. And children the ages from 11 to 13 will be watched during their practice to see if they're doing that too, because they're preventing that from that age as well. And honestly, this is a major step for U.S. Soccer for stepping up and enforcing this rule, as the repeated action of a head trauma is, once it happens once, it's more likely to happen every single time. And so having U.S. Soccer be the first to step up and say, hey, like, this is a major problem and we need to stop it early on, is a big step in reducing the amount of concussions that occur. But as in like most stories and most articles we read today about concussions and just in general, there's two sides to the argument. And it's truly the case that yes, we have implemented this new rule, but I personally, and I know many others, have not seen this be enough to end a stop to concussions. And referees and any other game officials during that time, coaches and any other leagues, are not really enforcing that rule of banning heading. And I haven't seen that new rule being taken to the next step of where still in the collegiate level, if someone receives a bump to the head or gets a head injury and goes to the ground, the play of soccer is still being played. And that's the cases in many football games. If someone receives a blow to the head, the play still continues. And I'd like to read this fact to you that was really astonishing when I was doing my research, is in 2010, more high school soccer players suffered concussions, which the number was 50,000, suffered more concussions than athletes in wrestling, baseball, basketball, and softball all combined. And soccer is a sport where parents get their kids involved from a very early age. And I know my parents were like involved me from maybe when I was 5, and they thought, hey, I'm going to have my daughter play this sport where she can have fun and be safe. And as these numbers and concussions are on the rise, I think parents have just been like, whoa, like, this soccer sport is not safe for my kid to do. And which is sad to think about, that these kids won't be able to play a sport maybe that they could play in the collegiate level, they can play in their future. But since concussions are on the rise, their parents are just not letting them doing that, because yes, U.S. Soccer has created this rule, but parents are failing to see that actually enforced in a certain game or in practices, because yes, this rule was enforced, but the concussions, if you were to look at a scale, are dramatically still increasing at any level. And the scariest part is to think that on the recreational level, where kids from the ages of 5 to 10 are receiving concussions, is truly just astonishing. And so another point to why sports organizations are not doing enough to protect these athletes is that sports leagues and organizations review the necessary concussion protocol that happens when an athlete receives a blow to the head, but somehow those athletes are making it back on the field to play. So as you know, many times during a game or a practice, a player will receive a blow to the head. And usually what occurs is on the field, an athletic trainer and on-field assistant the play will automatically stop, and that athlete will be taken off the field, and they will be asked a series of questions and tests that review the concussion protocol to see if they have an on-site concussion. And what that test involves is the player who receives the concussion will be asked, what is your date of birth? What's the color of the sky is a common one. They'd be asked what team you play for, what team are you playing, what month is it, what day is it, and they will be able to recite the alphabet. And lastly, the last on-site test will be if their pupil is dilated. If their pupils are dilated, that means there is something that is blowing to the head that caused those pupils to dilate. And if the athlete fails to pass those tests, they will not be allowed back on the field to play. But if the athlete passes just one of those tests, they will be able to return back to the field to play. And it happens most of the time that those players will get one of those questions right, and they will be able to go back to the field to play. And I'd have to say that it's actually happened to me once, that I answered a question and was able to return back to the field of play where I probably shouldn't have been able to. But it still has happened. And when researching this, I found an astonishing article that really left me jaw dropped by what has occurred. And I'd like to read that to you. So, excuse me. The NFL has had some scary stories about concussions, and when reading this article, it took my breath away. The article was entitled "Concussions in the NFL, A Player Tells His Story." Author Primal Rohit recalls Josh Cribbs' life in the NFL and how a concussion has affected his life. Josh Cribbs has played 11 years in the NFL and may not be able to live a full, healthy life because of the blows he has took to his head during his career. In the article, Rohit calls a time where Cribbs was hit so hard he could not remember what team he was playing. He was asked again when on site, "Who was your opponent?" Cribbs still had no idea and was made another attempt to stall. He finally stood up and responded, "The Denver Broncos." He was allowed then to proceed back to the field of play. As the story shows, concussion protocol that occurs do not always keep injured players off the field. And that's the scariest thing. Josh was clearly injured because he only answered one question correctly after 5 minutes of being asked what team he was playing. Then he was allowed back on the field. He undoubtedly should have not been able back on the field, as concussion protocol has advanced a little from 2016 till now when this case happened. It is still not the best. And the 52-year-old has retired from the NFL, and he was asked if he would allow his 6-year-old son, who is currently playing flag football, to follow in his footsteps. Cribbs responded, "I want him to be happy." He went on to say that his son would be allowed to play football if doing so made him happy. Ideally, the younger Cribbs would pursue a football career while being safe, the elder Cribbs said. Concussions are not only affecting the person who was injured, they are affecting the surrounding people, like your family, your teammates, and your friends. The fact that the serious head injuries are occurring more often may dictate if Cribbs' son will be able to play and live out his dream of playing football. There's no words, honestly, to describe the fate of Cribbs' son if that's his dream. Like, he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps, and if he can't do that, if his dad won't allow him to because of the amount of concussions people are receiving and how there's nothing being able to stop that, it's truly heartbreaking to see. And all in all, I think that there's things that we still do not know about concussions and why they are so prominent in sports, but we do know that the individuals are informed of what a concussion can do to you and what the long-term effects are. Technology advancement is surely going to help the reduction of head injuries, but the meaningfulness of having the NFL, U.S. soccer, and leagues like the NHL advocate for these new rules about contact, heading the ball, about concussions, is a major step around the world. We just need that little extra push to actually enforce those rules. Sports are a huge part of society, and to have people speak out like Josh Cribbs did about what a concussion has done to their life shows how powerful concussions really affect everyone. Sports organizations just need to step up and protect athletes right now and in the future. The talk about head injuries is something that will be continued to be talked about and advocated for, because concussions don't only affect the person injured, they truly affect the whole world.